All right, hi guys, we're going to get into chapter 5, Getting and Staying Organized. This lecture will be pretty short. We're really just going to talk about being thoughtful about your space. So take a minute right now and maybe look around. What does your study space look like right now? I know it's a little interesting being in quarantine. We may not have as much control over the space, and we certainly can't study outside of the house, but we should still be doing something to sort of minimize our distractions, make a separate space. I know I found it really helpful for myself. I have my office where I work in, but I have a separate space for my writing in my school that gives me a little bit more of a creative outlet instead of trying to pack it into the same place. So where are places that you can kind of study? How are you organizing your study space? Is it just things are everywhere and you spend more time finding the pencil or the notepad that you need? Or do you know where everything is? You can quickly get to it so you can stay focused on whatever it is you're reading, listening to, trying to analyze. So you need your own space. I know this kind of gets complicated in quarantine. You're sharing your space with family members, but if you can develop your own space, use that physical space. Again, it's really important that you have a space specific for school, somewhere that you can one walk away from when you're done and mentally disengage, but somewhere that is has everything that you need. It kind of creates that mood, so it'll help keep you focused, and it should be a separate space. A lot of students try to use like their bed, for example, and their laptop or their tablet. But oftentimes when we get in our bed, we get relaxed, and it's easy to drift off or start thinking about other things. It really makes it a little bit harder to focus because our body knows our bed is a place to relax. So, looking around, you need to choose your space that you can kind of associate with studying. Of course, it needs to be available. Meet your needs, so it should have good light so that you're not straining an outlet for your computer, again, tablet, whatever it is, that device that you're using, a place for your materials. And again, something where you can easily access the book or the tablet that you need instead of looking everywhere for the pen, right? And you spend 30 minutes trying to find a pen or a pencil, and that time you're just kind of out of the material. You've kind of forgotten what it was that you wanted to note take. So things should be easily accessible to help keep you in that zone. Um, it helps to have the support of others, and this is really important. I know a lot of us are struggling, but keeping that support, so minimizing the outside noise. So if you're logging into a lecture or you're listening to this lecture, making sure that you have your either headphones or AirPods that you need, or that there's not a lot of noise going on behind you with either siblings or other family members. Again, we talked about keeping it organized. Plan for those breaks. We talked about this again in time management. Uh, your brain will give up on you. So you need breaks, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's adding 30 minutes to go and Netflix and put a timer on that Netflix and then come back to your studying. Give yourself breaks so that your brain has a chance to kind of rest and kind of process everything that you've been doing. And then, of course, prepare for human interruptions. Of course, we're all getting a crash course in this right now with quarantine and everything being done out of our house. But expect that those are going to happen. And how do you minimize them? Again, headphones, AirPods. Is your space make sense for the interruptions, or is it in the living room where everybody's trying to watch TV and have conversations and doesn't need to be moved? Any of those kinds of things, the interruptions that you kind of see day to day, how can you minimize them? Is it moving your space? Is it updating your space? To kind of tune that out. So outside of quarantine, when campuses are back open, you will have a lot more options for your favorite study spots. A lot of students use the Learning Lab. Just so you know, you can go in the Learning Lab and just study. You're not required to use a tutor if you don't need it. So a lot of students go in there to study in case they need a tutor. Then that's the option. And if they don't, then they study. Also, the Learning Lab has printers, staplers, three-hole punch, all those good stuff. Your campus library has all those things for you too. Also, of course, it's pretty quiet in there. You won't get a lot of loud conversations. It's very, very good if you need a very quiet space. The Learning Lab gets a little bit noisy because you have tutors and study groups going on. So some students prefer the Learning Lab because they have more of that atmosphere. Some students want the really, really quiet. and they choose the library. You need to know what works best for you and make those choices. Campus lounge, an empty classroom, any of these are options if you have a community center that's close to your house. Again, a community library is an easy place. A coffee shop, when everything is back open someday, these will give you more options. Right now, in this moment, you're kind of thinking about study spaces that work in your home and where you have availability that you can be safe with the pandemic, but also lean into your weaknesses and your strengths. So I know for me, I usually have the TV on the background and it has to be on something I've seen before and I don't really care about, but the background noise helps me focus for whatever reason. Again, other students can't stand any background noise. So you really need to figure out which one works for you and how do you make that work. Do you need to listen to music? Do you need to not listen to music? Can you break up your study time so it works around everybody else's schedule? So while people at work, can you study so that when people are off of work and a little bit more engaged, you're not being distracted? And then once we are able to move back out into the world, you can start looking at these other places. Learning Lab and library are two of the most popular for students because they're already on campus, and see if they work for you. And let's talk about multitasking. We all like to brag that we're big multitaskers, but in reality, multitasking is really just switching between tasks, and it's not really as productive. So having your phone on while you're studying is an easy way to get distracted, whether it's a text message, it's a notification. How easy is it to look at that one Snapchat and then go down that rabbit hole and you've lost, let's say, 20 minutes of your hour of study time. And you've got to refocus. You've got to remember, wait, what was I reading? What was I trying to work on? Oh, yeah. And all of that kind of takes time away and takes focus away. So we always talk about driving is the ultimate multitask because you're listening to music, you're focusing on the road, you're watching what's going on around you. But we also know we can't drive and text, right? We've seen what happens with that. So it's not full multitasking. Your mind can really unfocus one thing at any given moment. When you're driving, you've sort of got an autopilot because you've got some muscle memory going. You've got things that you're used to. And let's really be honest. We have music going, but are we really listening to music while we're driving? Oftentimes we're not because our brain and our mind is focused on the driving and not the music. Even things that are severely impacted like multitasking. Again, we talked about that. So on the cell phone or texting, we know that doesn't work. We're not really multitasking when we're trying to look at our phone and drive. We're switching from driving to looking at our phone at the same time. Of course, it takes longer because you have to refocus and energize yourself with what it is that you're doing. So it can take longer. Again, you switch to your phone, you get on Snapchat, you come back and you have to think about, wait, what was I reading? Why was I reading this? Why was it important? So it's going to mess with that focus and being engaged in the material. That's assuming your mind does not fully shift back to where you were every time without losing your train of thought or forgetting important detail. So it's easy to overlook something because you switched away. It's easy to get back into it, but really still be thinking about that Snapchat you saw and not really be focused as you were before. Okay, and science has shown that people who constantly shift their attention from one thing and another in short bursts, the brain forms a pattern that makes it difficult to keep sustained attention in one thing. So the more often we practice this habit, the harder it is to stay focused on, let's say, our studying and our reading if we're constantly moving around. And we're seeing that a lot right now. Think about all the apps on your phone and how quick they go and how they want you to jump around and move on to the very next thing. That's a habit that we're forming, and it's making it harder for us to sit down and study and to really engage in the material. So multitasking increases production of the stress hormone because we're constantly moving. We're not really able to just kind of look at one thing and really synthesize it. We're constantly moving around in our brains. It also taxes the prefrontal cortex, and that's the part of the brain that integrates information. So it just it's like having static. When you're trying to read and engage in material, you have that constant static. If your brain is constantly moving around different subjects, switching from your phone back to your computer, maybe to a book, and then, whatever is going on behind you, maybe have you ever tried to cook while trying to multitask? I always burn stuff that way because I'm not fully focused. So we want you to study, we want you to minimize distractions, but don't try to study while you're doing 2 or 3 other different things, because what's going to happen is the material that you're trying to read or the material you're trying to understand is going to kind of fall to the side, and you're not really going to integrate the information, or you're going to miss some key details. All right, so how to avoid multitasking. There's some easy strategies. Turn off if your computer, if you need to, if like you need to maybe just read, turn off your computer. At a minimum, turn off notifications. Turn off your cell phone or mute it or put it in a different room. I have students who need it to be physically out of their space. Like turning it off is not enough. So they leave it in their room or somewhere else. Again, more turning off all of those notifications so that it's not dinging on your tablet, on your computer, wherever it is that you're trying to study. I promise that Snapchat or TikTok will still be there when you get done studying. And then leave your phone in your car. That's the one I don't recommend, only because it gets so hot. Put it somewhere where it's, so if you're on campus and you're trying to study, put it in the bottom of your bag. Put it somewhere safe. If it's not too hot, leave it in your car. Obviously, put up and out of sight. But the goal is physically removing it from your space. Unless, and I say all of that with the caveat, we all have different things going on. So I know for me, my phone never leaves my side, and that's because I have a kid. So if she's in school and I'm at work or I'm trying to study, I have to have my phone near me, because if the school calls me, I have to answer. That's not a choice for me. So, but I do have my notifications turned off. I always have my email turned off, because those emails are going to be there waiting for me whenever I'm done with my writing or whatever it is that I need to complete in my study space. So take all of that however it works for you. Any of these strategies that we will talk about for the next, we're coming into week 4, so the next 12 more weeks, is always about adapting it to your life. If you can't leave your phone, then turn off the notifications you don't need. Turn off the social media so that you can focus, and your phone's only there for what it was ever meant to be, a phone. However that's going to work, and adjust these for your life. So try batch processing. Have set times during the day for checking and responding to email and text. Right now, we're in a very email-heavy world with everything being virtual. So I definitely have times, even at work, where I have to get a work project done. So I close my email browser. Like I said, those emails will still be there, and I give myself an hour, let's say, to just work on this project. And then I go back to those emails. You can use your phone as one of your rewards. So if you have your to-do list for the day and you complete it, then you can give yourself, 30 minutes of just TikTok time or whatever it is that works for you. Use that concentrated time. So like we talked about, block off time for working on that one task. If it's really, like, let's say you're writing a paper, you should block off time just to write, just to either work on your outline, write that draft, do the research, whatever piece of the paper you need to work on that day. Block off time for just that paper so that you can get it done. Again, leaving your phone in your car or another room, somewhere safe, but somewhere where it's completely from your physical space, if turning it off is just not enough for you. Make sure you prioritize and you make those goals for the day so that you know what's important, what needs to be knocked out. I am big about this with my papers. I have my own internal deadlines because it stresses me out to think that I still have all this work to be done, and I see my hard deadline approaching. So I have internal deadlines when I want my outline done, when I want most of my research done, when I want my first draft written, so that I can kind of keep a pace that makes sense for me, especially depending on how crazy work is, or if my daughter has things on her calendar that I need to make sure she's at, then I can build it around all of those things. That keeps my anxiety down. I know for me, because I'm making progress, I can see what I'm doing on the paper, and I've built out a timeline that works best for my schedule because I have a very busy schedule. You're all college students. I have no doubt you have a busy schedule as well. So those big projects, it's really best to sort of plan ahead, and it's due in 2 weeks, and then build out individual goals and deadlines for yourself within those 2 weeks so that project or that paper is being worked on around your busy schedule. Again, we're going to talk a lot in the self-change project that you have at the end of the semester about a reward system. Definitely use television, video games, rewards at the end of the day. I like to spend the last couple hours of my day with watching TV. Usually, just it doesn't matter if it's good TV or bad TV, just something to sort of decompress. And then use those timers. So, like we said, if you give yourself the break, which you should while you're studying, and you're going to get on your phone or you're going to get on a streaming service, put a timer on it. I believe I mentioned this in another lecture, but Netflix really kind of screwed us as college students when they just started auto playing the next episode. And so that hour that you were going to take a break turns into 8 hours. And so that's all I really have for this chapter, guys. Just thinking about our study environment, making really meaningful opportunities to get that space that you need to minimize the distractions, to make sure that we're staying focused and make sure that we're adapting this to what makes sense for our lives. I think that's the biggest piece, is thinking about your schedule, thinking about your time management, thinking about your physical space so that you have a place and you have that time to really sit down and focus, do your studying, do your reading, do your homework, work on your exams, make your, cheat sheets and notes and flashcards, all of those places, all those things, you have a space for that. All right, thanks so much. Bye.